It's part of the process of learning how to create good boundaries, how to maintain them firmly, gently, sweetly, and consistently. Parents, please don't do this to your kids. Your children, if they are adults, they are adults. They are no longer children. Don't speak to them like they're 10. Don't put your expectations on them like they're still your kids. They're adults with their own families. Insults or ridicule. Have you gained weight? All right, if you need boundaries, and we all do, then this is the show for you. I'm Sonja. If you're already worried and anxious about the holiday season, or there's an anniversary of a death or something else coming up, and you're anticipating, or you're having a pop quiz already, or if you don't even know what I'm talking about, this show is for you. Already, I am hearing from most of the people that I work with one-on-one that they are having anxiety reactions in anticipation of the holiday season already. And actually on the community, this was a specific question. Someone asked, can I have a preemptive pop quiz? And the answer to that is absolutely. You can do that. You will do that often when you have an anniversary of, say, a death or a trauma. As that day starts to approach, you'll start to feel anxiety and physical symptoms and other things like that. You'll have this sort of sense of dread and not be able to quite put your finger on what it is. For me, that always happened about a month before. So a month before Father's Day, or a month before the holidays when we were going to have to be together in intense kinds of ways. So yes, you can, and you probably already are having preemptive pop quizzes. So 'tis the season for pop quizzes. I want to mention and outline specifically what a pop quiz is for all of you who may just now be finding me. A pop quiz is not merely the fight or flight, fawn and freeze stress response, because we can have those stress responses even when things are good. Say we got a new job that we're excited to begin, but we have some anxiety and perhaps we're irritable leading up to it. So that's just a stress response. A pop quiz, though, is more of an exaggerated stress response that usually is accompanied by strong anger or strong resentment and bitterness. So if we're an outward showing emoter like I was, then you'll be explosively angry and probably tear up something or be abusive to somebody. And if you are more of an introverted, sensitive, pleasing sort of personality, then you're not likely to do that. You're likely to stuff. Either way, there'll be a strong emotional reaction to usually a particular person or kind of person or a circumstance that triggers a historical emotion that is associated with particular memories, judgments, lies that we came to believe about ourselves and about God and about the world and about the other person, and then physical symptoms that go with that, which is why I talk about loving God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength as a template for healing the whole person. So all of your suffering is ordered to the healing of those emotions and memories, the heart, soul, mind, and strength. So pop quizzes then are typically our most excruciating patterns of suffering and stress response or trauma response. Now, when I use that word trauma, a lot of times we think, well, I didn't have a traumatic upbringing. I know I certainly felt that way. I didn't think that anything that I endured as a child was classified as trauma or abuse, okay? But a lot of times what's happening in a preemptive pop quiz or an anticipatory pop quiz is either an anniversary, or it could be grief. Maybe we've lost someone, or we've had infertility issues or miscarriages, those kinds of things. And we're going to be with a whole bunch of people who are going to ask a bunch of questions or say a bunch of dumb things. So that could be part of it. But typically, even those things are part of our pattern, our unique pattern of pop quizzes, and therefore suffering. And all of that is ordered to our healing. It's not punishment from God. And I've done a gazillion shows on this, so I'm not going to belabor that point. But what I want to say is, if you're having an anticipatory pop quiz already, and as the holidays approach, you're starting to feel some anxiety, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to practice what I'm going to share with you today, which is the 6 P's. So we're gonna do some planning. We're gonna predict, plan. We're gonna discern and articulate our priorities. We're gonna prepare. We're gonna protect, and we're going to live in peace. All right, the 6 P's. But before I get to that, I want to just say a lot of the anticipatory pop quiz has to do with great expectations. We expect the holidays are supposed to be all the things that the world tells us the holidays are supposed to be. Family, peace, love, and joy, giving, all that stuff. And they can be. But a lot of times they're not. And we get blindsided by those expectations because we expect people to be different. We expect ourselves to be different. And we expect the whole day and the whole season to just go perfectly and beautifully, idealistically, and those expectations get us in trouble. And that's part of why we have crashes afterward, and we have pop quizzes in the middle and before and after. So, the great expectations, I want you to stop them. And we're going to use the stop tool to work through some of these anticipatory pop quizzes and the pop quizzes that you will likely experience during the holiday season and perhaps even after. We're going to talk about all of that today. So part of the expectations have to do with parents and children. And we had a divorce. My parents divorced when I was 13. And so we had both parents' homes to go to. And that meant a lot of travel. And it meant, the implication that we spent too much time at one place and not enough time at the other place. And why did you eat there and not here? And I mean, there's only so much eating you can do. So there was that. And then there are the expectations that our parents put on us for how they want the holidays to go. And that might mean that you have to pack up your whole family. Maybe you have a bunch of littles or just kids. And you pack up the whole family and you drive 6 or 7 hours, and then their routine is messed up. The diet is messed up. Everything is just different. All of the environment, all of the rules, everything is different. So, parents, couple of rules of thumb here. Please don't do this to your kids. Your children, if they are adults, they are adults. They are no longer children. Don't speak to them like they're 10. Don't put your expectations on them like they're still your kids. They're adults with their own families. One of the rules of thumb that I have tried to adhere to very strictly is I don't say anything to my grown children that I would not say to any other adult. I don't use the tone that I used to use with them when they were kids, or I try not to. And I mean, I'm not perfect at it either. But try to discipline yourself not to put your expectations on your children and their families, first of all. Secondly, don't speak to them like they're kids, because they're not. They are adults and they have their own families and priorities. Once they reach adulthood, you are in no authority over them anymore. And so to try to manipulate or assert your authority over them is a lack of respect. God never does that to us. He will tell us, he'll ask us, he'll invite us, he'll suggest, he'll tell us what this is good for you and this isn't, but he doesn't assert manipulation or control over us. So parents, this is a message for you, and I'm going to call you children, but those of you who are adult children who are trying to fulfill the expectations of parents, I'm going to give you some tools for all of us. All of us need to keep each other in mind and what the priorities are. So first of all, I want to outline what abuse is, because a lot of times when we start to have anticipatory pop quizzes, it's because we have lived with someone or in a family where abuse was common. And I don't say this as a criticism. I did all of these. So here are some of the signs of emotional abuse. I'm not talking about physical abuse, right? We're not going to ever put ourselves in a situation where there's physical abuse, ever. But a lot of times we don't view emotional abuse as abuse. So here are some signs: yelling, name calling, insults or ridicule. Have you gained weight? Manipulation, passive aggressive or aggressive anger. Attempting to make you question your sanity, gaslighting. Invading your privacy or disrespecting your boundaries. Punishing you for not going along with what they want. Trying to control. That's just an overt way of manipulating sometimes. Isolating you from family and friends. Making subtle or overt threats. Now, I have done all of those. I brought all of that into my marriage and taught my husband how to do some of it. And then when he started doing it back, I said, oh no, we're not going to do this. And then I started calling him out and changing my own behavior. So if you grew up like this, or if you've been in a marriage like this, or if you have experienced this kind of treatment over a period of time, then these kinds of behaviors are going to trigger your fight or flight response. And depending on what kind of experiences you've had in the past, it could be a super strong one or it could be somewhat mild. But either way, if you're feeling confusion, fear, hopelessness, and guilt and shame around the holidays already, or brain fog, moodiness, muscle tension, insomnia or bad dreams, a racing heartbeat, some kind of physical flare like fibromyalgia or some sort of physical crash, fatigue, anxiety, and depression, all of those are signs of a pop quiz. All right? So, what is a trauma bond? First of all, when we have guilt and shame surrounding trying to put boundaries in place with certain people because they can be abusive and they're not listening to us, it's because there is a trauma bond. A trauma bond is when a person forms a deep emotional connection with someone that actually causes harm. And it develops in a cycle. There's a cycle of good treatment and then bad treatment. And the good treatment, when that comes, then you're fooled into thinking that things have changed or that they can change until the cycle of abuse begins again. And then you say something or you put in a boundary and then the person promises to change, or they gaslight you, and then maybe you detach and make some space between you, like literally, and then perhaps they suck you back in with more good treatment, right? And then the cycle begins all over again. But there's abuse and positive reward in the cycle. And it's built on a power imbalance. say between children and parents. And I'm not saying everybody's parents are abusive, but I am saying, or everybody's kids are abusive, or everybody's relations are abusive. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if you're having an anticipatory pop quiz, this could be part of why. All right, so we need to recognize, first of all, if we're having a pop quiz, that we're having a pop quiz, why we're having a pop quiz, and why when we try to put good boundaries in place, we feel guilty. We feel guilty because of trauma bonds. But it's a false guilt. Every one of us has the dignity of the human person where we don't have to justify what we need and want and what our boundaries are. I mean, we can, but we don't have to. We're adults. We get to do what we want. That's the beauty of being a grown-up. So, if you feel unhappy with the person, and maybe you don't even like them anymore, but you feel unable to detach from them or place boundaries, when you do try to place boundaries, you feel guilty physically, and that guilt manifests physically and emotionally in a distress reaction. When you express concern, they gaslight or they promise to change and then they take no action to change at all. You fixate on the good days or the good times or the good seasons, using those good things to prove that they really do care somewhere underneath that behavior. If you make excuses for them and you defend them when other people raise concern, if you continue to trust them and hope that they're going to change despite all the proof, or you try to change them, or you protect them by hiding or keeping secret their behavior, say from other family members or a church family, I don't know, but those are signs that there's a trauma bond there, all right? And if that's you, I mean, have mercy, I had them. So if that's you, this is why it's so difficult to put boundaries in place without all this guilt and shame. But the guilt and shame that you're feeling there is from the trauma bond, and it's a false guilt. So we don't listen to that, all right? If you need boundaries, and we all do, then this is the show for you, all right? So the 6 Ps, what do we do as the holidays are approaching or as the anniversary approaches? So this is not just for the holidays. This is for any time there's an anniversary like Father's Day or Mother's Day, or I don't know, any time when your family might typically gather, or something dramatic or traumatic has happened, a death, a trauma, something like that. An approaching anniversary will bring on an anticipatory pop quiz. And so we need to predict them. So the first of the 6 Ps is to predict. Those who don't know history, they say, are bound to repeat it. So look at your history, the history of the people with whom you are going to gather. How did they behave in the past? And what are their triggers and what triggers them? 2 of the big ones are politics and religion. All right. Drinking, comments, I mean, just all kinds of things can trigger other people to do ugly things and can trigger us to do ugly, abusive things. So we need to be able to predict by looking at past history how things are probably going to go. All right. Dr. Phil said the best predictor of future behavior is the past behavior. So prediction is not projection. And I bring this up because in a consult this week, someone actually worried and felt guilty that they were projecting their anticipation or their prediction on to a couple of family members. And it's not a prediction to base a prediction, it's not a projection to base a prediction on past behavior. All right, that's just wise. So it's not that we're not judging the other person. We're just predicting so that we can take steps to protect ourselves and our peace. Because peace is your greatest gift from God aside from eternal salvation. So people claim all the time, I just want peace, I just want peace. Well, you have it. You have Jesus, who is the Prince of Peace. You already have peace. You get it at the Mass. Go in peace. Peace I give you, my peace I leave you. You already have peace. You just don't know how to guard it. So these holiday times are opportunities to start practicing how to guard your peace. And we must predict in order to be able to plan. So hope for the best and plan for the worst based on past behavior, both your own, that of your children, your spouse, the people you're going to gather with, all the things, right? So you can see this is going to take some time, but you've lived with this for decades. So you already know. It's just been probably guilt-ridden to consider putting a plan in place, but it's just wise. If you're interested in guarding your peace, you got to do this. All right. So predict first. That's the first P. The second is plan. Again, you want to identify the triggers, the people, the places, the circumstances, the particular kinds of comments that particular people typically make, and just prepare emotionally and mentally for that. That's just who they are right now. And they're not your problem. They're not your concern. You're not going to try to change them, but you are going to plan to guard your peace. So identify the triggers, and then you want to limit exposure. So I was working with someone this week who has, oh my gosh, the stuff going on in this holiday season for her. She has the wedding of her son coming up, then Thanksgiving. She just lost her mother. So her family's going to be at the wedding. Then they're going to gather for Thanksgiving like they always do, and so they always must. And then there's Christmas, at which time they typically take a trip together, the whole family. Now they're all grieving, first of all, because they've lost their mother. And now there's a wedding. And there's some conflict going on about the distribution of property and assets after the mother died. So, and all the family baggage is present as well. So you've got the family baggage from all of their life together, and then the previous Christmases and previous holidays. You've got the grief of the mother dying, the last parent to be alive, and then you've got the wedding. So before any of the holiday stuff occurs, she has a wedding. So we spent an entire hour planning how she wanted to present and how she wanted to guard her peace, first of all, at the wedding, just because that's the first thing coming up. And part of that was she was afraid. She was already having the fear response, and she has gut issues, and so those were completely inflamed. So she's having a physical attack, which is the signal to her that this is a pop quiz. And she already knew this. She knew it was going to be. Because these particular people, some of them, always cause pop quizzes for her. Okay, so they're going to all be together at this happy celebration at this wedding. And so she's got a lot of people coming who truly love and respect both her and her family. Most of them are church family, all right? And she is so looking forward to that, to thanking them for coming to celebrate this sacrament of marriage, to celebrate her and her family, their friendship together. They're going to share a meal. She's looking forward to that a lot. And then there are other family members who have been disinvited, and a few that are still invited, but are, the whole thing is very tentative because they're not always on their best behavior. And with the grief happening, that's understandable. Okay, she knows that. But we want to limit the exposure to the negativity that is almost inevitable given history and her experience with certain people who will be present. So I advised her to take frequent breaks. About an hour in, first of all, her attitude is going to be one of the regal queen. because she wants to be a good hostess. She wants to welcome. When I say good, I just mean she wants to be welcoming and hospitable and thankful and warm. And she wants to maintain that throughout the rehearsal dinner and the wedding and the celebration after. So that's a gauntlet, okay? That's a gauntlet. So she's going to need frequent breaks. So we're limiting exposure. The breaks give her a break from the exposure, and she's going to go to the restroom and spend some time breathing deeply, checking in with God, maintaining her peace so that she can maintain her peace, and practicing healing hands. Healing hands for her, usually for me, I do it on my chest. You just put your hand on your chest, or for her, her gut, because she has gut issues. So you put your hand on the place that is inflamed or communicating through a symptom, and you just rub gently. Healing hands. There is soothing that happens there. Oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, just from the touch. And even when we do it for ourselves. So she is going to take a break, limit her exposure by taking breaks, and practice the healing hands, practice the deep breathing until she can get control over her breathing and her emotions and her thoughts. And then she can go back out. So limiting exposure might mean I know that I have about 1 hour's bandwidth to tolerate some people. So I make a plan, an exit plan. I'm going to be there for 1 hour. I might stretch it to an hour and a half or two if it's going well and I feel peaceful. I might stretch it to 2. But either way, I have an exit plan. I have driven myself so that I can leave when I want and I don't have to wait on other people. Or whatever the exit plan is, make one. Know what your limits are emotionally and physically. Know what they are and make an exit plan so that you can limit your exposure. What do you want your attitude to be? Do you want it to be one of peace? Do you want it to be one of consistency and firmness in your boundaries? And you can do both things, right? Because setting good boundaries gives us peace. It protects our peace. But whatever you want your attitude to be, plan for that to begin with so that you can coach yourself when you start to feel like you're spinning out, all right? Also, it's very helpful to collect a couple of Bible verses to remind you of the truth. Say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, right? When you're lacking self-control or when you feel like you're about to get angry, that's where you remove yourself and get into the bathroom and get some peace, okay? But limit exposure and use a couple of Bible verses to help coach you when your thoughts start to go down the road of negativity or fear, all right? You want, in every situation, to simply stand. You don't want to fight. When Paul talks about the armor of God and the weapons of warfare, there's only one weapon, and it is the Word of God. He tells us to stand and resist. We're not fighting. We're not fighting them because ultimately they're not the enemy. The enemy is the enemy, not the person who's standing in front of you who is instigating or is hurtful or spoiling for a fight. That person is not the enemy. The enemy is the enemy. So all we're asked to do is resist. So we're not going in to fight. If you think or feel like you're spoiling for a fight, then the best thing to do is not go at all. That's like the extreme of limiting your exposure. If you can predict that this is going to go so badly for you that it's unhealthy or sinful, then perhaps you need to not go at all and just opt out. I actually work with someone who has severe rheumatoid arthritis, and she has terrible, terrible flares anytime she has an exposure to her family for right now. Now that will change as her body begins to heal in the new habits of safety that she is creating for both herself and her family. That will begin to change, and it already has begun to change. But right now, because it's brand new, these boundaries are pretty new for her. Every exposure she has to her family causes a physical flare for which she is in bed. And in order for that not to happen, because she's got other things to do, she's got a job to do, she's got a family to take care of. In order to prevent that from happening, she has opted out of many of those family gatherings. So opting out is absolutely an option. You're a grown-up. You get to do what is good for you and your family. All right? So only necessary contact. And perhaps you do just opt out. That's always a choice. Let's address those verbal and physical, we'll say, replies. So what do I mean by that? I mean, when that person who always says that rude thing, plan what you're going to say. And don't make it some long, drawn-out thing. You want it to be punchy. I work with a woman who has she has a close friend who has been a friend since they were very, very young in elementary school. And this friend has always exhibited certain controlling, manipulative behaviors, but it's only recently that those behaviors have become intolerable for this person. And she's looking to address that, okay? I realize that I have contributed to this pattern because I sort of overlooked it because it didn't really bother me, but now it's bothering me. And she was planning on how to have this sort of conversation with this person, and she wanted to go into this long kind of explanation. So first of all, you don't have to explain how you feel, and you don't have to justify it, all right? And the punchier you are, the better. And so I sort of just suggested that rather than the long explanation for why she is placing a boundary, instead of that, something simple like, I no longer want to contribute or participate in the Pavloving. Now, they know what that means between the two of them. But my point here is, that's it. That's all the boundary you really need sometimes, is just to say something to someone. So when the person who always does the thing that is insulting or rude or inappropriate, you can say something. But plan what you're going to say ahead of time so that it doesn't come out angry and argumentative and accusatory. Rather, it comes from a place of peace and even love, because we don't want to participate in this negative dance anymore with this person, and we don't want to enable them either. So plan your verbal response. When X happens, I'm going to say Y. And you want it to be punchy, brief, and then perhaps, here's what I advised this person, and I practice this myself. I decide what it is I want to say, I make it punchy and short, and then my plan is I'm going to say it sweetly, and even not as a joke, but with humor. I'm going to try to say it with humor, and then I'm going to immediately change the subject so that it doesn't have to become some big dramatic conflict and argument, okay? And then, if it's appropriate, giggle and walk off. That's the physical reply that you may or may not plan into how to respond to comments or behaviors or whatever that you're going to be exposed to inevitably in these sorts of times and situations and gatherings. All right, so plan your verbal and physical replies or responses. Make them short and punchy, If you can inject a little bit of humor, do that. Change the subject very quickly so that it doesn't become a bomb. And if you can, just walk off with a little giggle and a smile, or "Mwah, I love you." Something like that, okay? It just takes practice, but that's my own practice. And then let's address guilt, because as soon as you start planning this in your mind, depending on the relationship, you're going to feel guilty. You're going to feel guilty that you have maybe called out someone and in a way that sort of exposes something that no one talks about. But again, evaluate if this is a trauma bond, and there should not be guilt related to good, healthy boundaries. There should not be guilt and shame associated with good, healthy boundaries. There's a difference in hurting someone's feelings and actually harming them. So as you're planning, evaluate, am I hurting them, or will I hurt them with this? Or am I actually going to harm them? Yes, it might hurt their feelings a little bit, but is it going to actually harm them, or is it going to help them? Is it going to help them see how uncomfortable people are around them when they do this? I don't know. All I'm saying is evaluate. Is this actually hurting them or harming them? God hurts us all the time. In pop quizzes especially. He doesn't send them to us, but he definitely allows them in order to heal us more deeply. So we get our feelings hurt, but we're not harmed. It's actually helpful if we know how to cooperate with them. So evaluate whether it's hurtful or harmful. And then one of the things that I say to myself quite often when I have evaluated that, yes, this probably will hurt their feelings, but I'm not responsible for their feelings, first of all. And secondly, it has to be said, or it has to be done. Here's my rule of thumb. I remind myself, I see your pain, and I am truly sorry for it, but it is not mine to carry. I'm empathetic automatically, and so I do often take on the emotions of other people, but I've gotten a lot better at discerning what is mine and what is not. And when I discern that it is not mine, I detach from it, because it's not mine to carry. It's not mine to control. It's not mine to manipulate. So if what I am doing is necessary, even if it's hurtful, I remind myself, I see and I sympathize with your pain, but it's not mine to carry. All right? Maybe that's helpful to you. So the first P is predict, the second P is plan, the third is priorities. As you're planning, keep your priorities in mind. Your first priority is your relationship with God. That means if this is going to be a near occasion of sin, you need to strictly limit your exposure. It means if it's going to interfere in any way with your relationship with God or the time that you spend with Him, then you need to plan accordingly. The second priority, if you're married, is your marriage and your children. Not your family, not your extended family, and not your church family. So, first priority is God and your relationship with Him. Second priority is your marriage, your children. That's your second vocation. Everyone's first vocation is to God Himself and that relationship. Our second vocation is marriage and family, or holy orders, or religious life, or singleness. Some say singleness. Either way. Whatever your vocation is, that's your next priority. That means your marriage and your children and your family take precedent over the parents and their expectations and their needs and wants. So if it is a burden to travel 6 hours with 4 small children and spend a weekend or a week disrupting all of their routines, their diets, their sleep, and everything else, perhaps you need to do something different. And you don't need permission from your parents or from anyone else. But in case you do, You have permission because it is a priority. Your marriage and your children and yourself, because you are a part of that marriage and family. What you and your marriage and your children and your family need is what you make priority. Now, I know some of y'all parents are going to be super mad at me and want to stone me, but I'm just telling you, this is how it works. This is the hierarchy of priorities. If you'll look in the 10 Commandments, you'll see it. God first, then your vocation, and then everything else. Your immediate family, and then everything else. So, priorities. And here's another priority. When you're thinking about everything else and how and where to fit in those visits to family and those family dinners, when you're thinking about that, remember that the blood of Christ trumps the blood of your family of origin. This was super freeing to me. The Eucharist is the body and blood of Christ. And that blood is more powerful and more unifying than physical, literal blood ties. That's why Jesus said, I did not come to create unity, something like that. I came to divide. I came with a sword to divide mother against daughter, father against son, that kind of thing. He means those who are his family through his blood, the family of God, divided from those who are not. So the blood of Christ trumps family ties. And that freed me a lot because my church family became much more of a family than my own, well, especially my father. And in the beginning, that felt shameful and I felt guilty for it. But I realized they know how to love and they want to. And so a lot of times I did choose those ties over my own literal family, my family ties, meaning my parents or siblings, okay? I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying that gives you sometimes a level of freedom in understanding that we're not obligated to meet the expectations of the people in our family of origin. We can if it's helpful and peaceful for us, and we want to, but we're not obligated. Okay? That's my only point. So when you're planning, keep in mind those priorities. God first, then your vocation, which is either, probably, for most of us, marriage and children and our immediate family, and then our extended family. All right? And somewhere in there, you can also prioritize the blood of Christ over the blood of your family ties, if that's appropriate for you. Then you prepare. Because odds are keeping yourself under this kind of control and deliberation is going to take a lot of energy. So you need to prepare for recovery after. Now, I do this even when I have speaking events. I plan on a good full day, sometimes two, after travel, just for re-entry. I call it re-entry. I got groceries to buy and stuff to do to catch up and all the emails and all the stuff. But also, I just need to sleep. I need some rest. I need to recover. So plan for a crash afterward. It probably will also be emotional. Maybe you keep yourself together through the whole wedding or the whole Thanksgiving dinner or the whole Christmas. Maybe you hold it together and then you get home, let yourself crash. Let the emotions wash over you. Take time to process those pop quizzes and plan, okay? So you're going to prepare ahead of time. You're going to schedule a rest day if you're able, especially if you have physical symptoms that are already erupting in anticipation. You need a rest day beforehand so that you can gather your inner resources in adoration and prayer, so that you can sleep and get some deep restorative sleep before, so that you can eat well and foods that are going to support you physically, so that you can get control over your thoughts ahead of time and decide how you're going to think, so that you're not catastrophizing and you're not making mountains out of molehills and you're not leaping on to every snide comment or letting every snide comment stick to you so that you spiral down this terrible emotional rabbit hole. All right? So ahead of time, and I mentioned this before, you're going to plan your thoughts. You're going to have your verses ready. You're going to know what to say to coach yourself. You're going to know what your replies are going to be. And then forgive yourself in advance for not doing this perfectly. Forgive yourself in advance and forgive the people that you're going to be with in advance, because odds are they're not doing any of this. They're not even aware of their stuff. At least you're trying. Okay, so forgive them too. But still, you want to prepare. So to prepare for, first of all, the anticipation ahead of time, and to gather your resources, you want a day before and at least a day after, just for recovery and preparation. And in that day of preparation, you're going to gather your inner resources with prayer and perhaps adoration. You're going to sleep. You're going to watch your diet. You're going to know how to control your thoughts. You're going to prepare what your replies are going to be, and you're going to forgive yourself in advance. All right? That's the preparation. So afterward, then, you have time, after you've executed, which is the next step, protect. The next P is to protect. So predict, plan, priorities, prepare, and protect. Protect means to execute the plan. You're going to go, and we're going to keep Matthew 10 in the forefront of our minds. Remember, I said at the very beginning that this is an opportunity to practice. So keep the first part of Matthew 10 in mind, where Jesus said, I am sending you as sheep into the midst of wolves. Be sly as foxes and gentle as doves. All right, so that's the attitude we want to go in with. And knowing that it's an opportunity, we're going to be sly, not sneaky, but plan. We're going to plan. All right? So keep that in mind. You're a sheep in the midst of wolves, or at least that's how it feels, right? He said, I came to bring division, right? And so necessarily separating from toxic family is okay to do. It's okay. Limit your exposure. Then the Holy Spirit will give you what to say, because chances are all your best planning is going to be met with circumstances and comments and people that you didn't plan for, which is why we forgive ourselves ahead of time. But also, don't worry about that. Just cast that anxiety onto the Lord, knowing that in the moment He will give you what to say. Trust Him to do that. Ask Him to do that. Make that part of your planning ahead of time. Holy Spirit, please help me in those moments when I don't know what to say. Help me to say the right thing, or the helpful thing, or the healthy thing. Please come to my aid in that moment. That's what He does. He's the advocate. He's the comforter. He's the counselor. All right, so He helps us in the moment. That's also in Matthew 10. And then He says, don't fear. He says, don't fear in that passage several times. So we don't need to be anxious. That's part of why we're planning. And I mean, you're still going to be nervy, and that's okay. But you have a plan. It's going to give you a little better sense of control. And we don't have to fear ultimately, because you're not really in danger. It just feels like it because of trauma bonds and experiences from the past. So your fight or flight kicks in, but you're not actually in literal physical danger. And if you are, why are you going? Okay, that's obvious. But then he says, after he says, do not fear, he says, you are worth more than sparrows. I know every hair on your head. So don't worry. You are worth more than sparrows. So he knows all of this, but talk to him about it, especially in your preparation. Talk to him about it, and as you're planning, so that you can get guidance from the Holy Spirit on what to say, what not to say, all the things that we're talking about here. And then the last P is peace. Use the stop tool, especially when it's all over, because chances are you're probably going to experience some kind of trigger. Even if you have planned very well, perhaps you might. And if you do, then use your stop tool. That's a whole other episode. But you can find out about the stop tool and how to use that in the mini course on my website, sonjacorbitt.com. And it's at the guide.becauseloveheals.com as well. That's in the video here. But we're going to practice the stop tool. We're going to forgive. Forgive yourself ahead of time, but forgive yourself afterward if you kind of lost it. It's part of the process. It's part of the process of learning how to create good boundaries, how to maintain them firmly, gently, sweetly, and consistently. That's what we're learning here. We need boundaries. We need to give boundaries to other people. So part of that forgiveness then is going to be just to release them. Just release them to Jesus. You don't need to change them. You don't need to try to point out anything. This is about you, not them. It's not about changing them at all. It's about learning how to guard your peace. So peace that's the goal. And if we don't maintain it during these holiday seasons or the wedding or the anniversary, whatever, that's fine. All right, forgive yourself and release yourself even to the Lord, because it is His job to perfect you, not yours. You can't anyway. Half the time you don't even know what's going on with yourself, much less how to fix it. All right. And besides, we're not worried about fixing anyway. We're worried about healing. So healing is something only God can do. But we can cooperate. And that's why these anticipatory pop quizzes, as they start to occur for you, this is normal. There's nothing wrong with you. And it doesn't even make the people that draw this sort of reaction up in you, it doesn't make them bad. It just means that there's unresolved stuff that needs to be healed, and this is part of the practice of that. These pop quizzes are meant to give you an opportunity to work through everything in your heart, soul, mind, and strength with that stop tool. Also, I want to mention, let me mention my newest friends of the show, because I just love you, and I thank you so much for your support. You can become a friend of the show at my website, sonjacorbitt.com. Just click on Friends of the Show. But your support and your help, you are a part of every single evangelistic effort I make. Every one. The fact that I'm doing these videos, you helped contribute to my being able to do that. And all the YouTube things that you're seeing, all the new, all of it, you have helped contribute to that. And I cannot thank you enough. But I'm going to try. All right. So Gina S., Teresa VP, Denise H., Colette G., Angela C., Noel N., Sharon T., Estelle C., Carolyn McGee, Katie P., Kimberly P., Kim L., Gary K., Christine C., Louis M., Elizabeth M.K., Denise E., and Jeannie K. Thank you. I also want to mention that if you are interested in learning more about boundaries, what the Bible says about them, how to put them in place, what God says about them, all of that is available in my previous series called The Little Way. That whole thing, it's based on Matthew 18 and all that Jesus says about boundaries. He talks about boundaries for an entire chapter, before he talks about forgiveness at all. And usually we have those backwards. We think we have to forgive every single thing that people do to us without boundaries at all. And we do have to forgive it. I'm not saying that, but I am saying forgive and boundaries. We do both things, okay? We don't have to let people abuse us. And in fact, if we do, then we're enabling it and we're complicit in their sin. So boundaries are super important, but they're complicated. They can be very complicated to put into place and to maintain. So if you want more information on that, you can get that at the Little Way series. You can go to sonjacorbitt.com, begin, and then podcasts, and then scroll down to the list there and just click on the Little Way and you can get all of those shows. I think there's like 8 or something like that. So lots of good information to help prepare you for the season of pop quizzes because it is upon us. All right, so I hope this helps. The 6 P's: predict, plan, priorities, prepare, protect, and peace. I'm Sonja Corbitt.